Greetings and welcome to this special program. My name is Martin Nafuka and alongside me is Giovanni. Plessis. We are the political analysts for Activated Talks podcast. Now, on this special program, we will be discussing the legacy of the late founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma. Giovanni Plessis, would you like to say a word of introduction?
Small word I want to say is we know the nation is grieving for the loss of our founding father, but we'll get through this with perseverance, and the perseverance that he has shown us that he also has himself, and which he has taught the Namibian nation.
Absolutely. I think, Giovanni, one of the things that Namibians need to learn is President Nujoma's contribution to democracy, to a stable Namibian democracy, which is perhaps one of the most stable in Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. And this started off when the country first gained independence with the policy of reconciliation.
Yes, a lot of people actually, like everyone has critics. Our founding father, nonetheless, also has his own critics also, which would say, he wanted to be a dictator by taking free terms. But the way I see it, those free terms were necessary for Namibia under his leadership to reconcile Namibia, because he was the only one that had the power at that time to reconcile Namibia. No matter, remember when Namibia became independent, Namibia was divided along tribal lines.
Oh, very much divided.
But he pulled the nation together.
Yeah.
The only manner he could.
And he did it under the slogan of one Namibia, one nation.
Yes.
One Namibia, one nation.
Yes. And
so the whole idea of tribalism and hatred, because what the apartheid government did was diabolical.
Yes, very diabolical.
There was division of the highest order against the tribes, and you look at another tribe, and it's like you're looking at an enemy, or black people look at white people, and it's like, But that reconciliation ensured that there is stability and peace between black and white after independence.
And also a peaceful transition of power. That was, people take that for granted, the peaceful transition of power from the late Dr. Sam Nujoma to
transitioning to Dr.
Bohamba. Yes, that was seamless, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And not in all SADC countries this happened. Some guys took power for themselves. We won't mention names, but yeah.
Look at Robert Mugabe.
He was
very authoritarian, and unfortunately, we have to mention names. And some of President Nujoma's closest friends were dictators, were having dictatorial tendencies.
But that is why we say we had a wise founding father.
We had a wise, because
very wise.
And I always say we must be grateful that he continued to preserve the values of democracy.
Always. And one of he was aligned with states like China and Cuba, communist states. He never turned communist. Even though he had close ties with these countries.
And I think one of the things that democracy aims to achieve is the prosperity of all peoples.
Yes.
And Namibia, upon independence, was very, very much unequal.
Yes.
In terms of land inequality, 70% of the land upon independence was owned by white people.
And Dr. Sam Nujoma addressed this. Yeah. Coming into the presidency, by the get-go, he addressed this. But a lot of critics would say, no, he didn't do enough. There wasn't a lot he could do at the time. Remember, the water is hot. Independence just came. The water is hot. So if you just try to touch something here, everyone was jumping. So he did what was necessary at the time.
The policies of land redistribution are addressed in the Namibian Constitution, Article 16.
Which was pivotal in doing.
Yes, it was very pivotal. Dr. Nujoma, President Nujoma, he saw the passing of this very progressive and democratic constitution.
Which was the best in the 90s. One of the best. Currently, even one of the best. Most of our coastlines are protected under this constitution. Human rights are guaranteed in this constitution.
Absolutely. Now, in this very constitution, the expropriation of land is provided, but with compensation.
Yes,
with compensation. It's absolutely because you cannot have progress with inequalities.
Yes.
And the inequality, especially in terms of the distribution of arable land, is severe. And even up to now, it's still severe, but we thank Dr. Sam for the precedent that he has set.
Even with one thing I love is the way he put an emphasis on education. He never held back on the emphasis of education, always striving for every Namibian child to be educated.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we are 95% literacy rate.
Yes, we're around that.
Around the 90s.
Yeah. And that is due to him also, which people do not give him credit for, which he needs to get credit for.
He needs to get credit for, and I think the number of children entering primary school is a fair amount. The number just getting that basic education.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very fair amount, and that it places us in a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And all his predecessors always say, from Dr. Ifike Pohamba to Dr. Hage, they all say they learned from him.
But Dr. President Nujoma was also very, when it comes to addressing inequalities,
yes.
he not only stopped at length, he was having the affirmative action policy. Yeah. So the affirmative action policy was to say that those who were previously disadvantaged in the previous regime,
yes.
Some sort of policy should be undertaken to ensure that these injustices are addressed. Yeah. So this was now in terms of empowering black people and empowering black businesses.
Yes.
What do you think of that approach?
That was a wonderful approach. I love that he didn't go the route that South Africa went with the BEE, that only certain members of government are getting shares in big corporations, but the main guy is still being addressed. This is what we were saying, guys. We had a very wise founding father, and people are not acknowledging the great men that we have and the giant that Africa has just lost, especially Southern Africa. He was the last African giant, the last African giant.
Absolutely.
In the SADC area.
And even if you look at media freedom at the time, we had a free press.
Free press, which he was pivotal in
very pivotal. I mean, it was not perfect. But other people would just do away with it. If a particular media is critical of government, close it down. Absolutely, we don't do it. But he didn't do that.
And
because of his because of how he valued the values of democracy.
Yes. People don't actually understand is Namibia's non-alignment came from Dr. Nujoma himself.
Yeah.
That is one of the best policies.
That brings us to our foreign policy under Dr. Nujoma.
Yes.
The non-alignment policy.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is to say, enemy to none, friends to all.
Which Namibia still lives by.
Still our foreign policy. Perhaps one of our strongest and most obvious foreign policy stances. But another foreign policy stance that Nujoma had was Pan-Africanism. Yes,
he was very proud of being Pan-African and pushing Pan-Africanism.
He was a huge believer in African unity.
And he said one day he would hope the Namibian flag gets retired in a museum.
Put in a museum. Replaced by the African Union flag.
That's so beautiful, guys. I wish it could happen in my lifetime, or that Doctor could have seen it himself.
I don't see any other leader currently that is pushing for African unity.
Yes, even in the time after Kwame Nkrumah, he was the only one.
He was the only one. I think the whole idea of African unity is dangled. I mean, now we have the free continental trade, but still, if you look at, for example, what was happening recently between the tensions between Rwanda and South Africa, and how the citizens of Rwanda were reacting with the citizens of
South Africa.
You can see the idea of African unity is not very close to being a reality, or at least it's not something that is implanted in the minds of the people.
And the great thing, he was also the one pushing for Namibia to join the African Union. Before that, it was AOU. Am I correct?
Yeah, the Organization of African Union.
Yes. So he was the one pushing for Namibia to join.
Yeah.
This was forward thinking at that time. Even a lot of African leaders were hesitant in joining the organization, but Dr. Nujoma was pushing. It's just Namibia got independence. He was the one pushing for Namibia to join.
And maybe many Namibians wonder, but why is there an African Union flag at every government office? It was a policy that he passed. It was a law that he passed, an act of parliament that he passed to say that at every state organization or institution, it must
have the African Union.
Yeah, it must hoist the African Union flag, which was amazing. But we can also maybe look at Sam Nujoma's support for gender equality.
Yes. So even through his first cabinet, you could see the breakthrough of women coming through his first cabinet. A lot of African leaders didn't actually have a lot of women in their cabinets. Dr. Nujoma brought forth women like Memina Dintaitwa, for instance.
A lot of women
came through his first cabinet also. So you can see this to say, no, he was forward thinking in the sense of gender equality. Even in the ministries, you could see there were women empowerment.
Yeah, I mean, we can also look at SWAPO now has the 50-50 policy of parliament. They call it the zebra style.
Yeah.
One female for one male.
For one male, yeah.
But maybe we can also talk about his contributions to social welfare of the pensions.
Yes. So he was also one pushing for pensions also, and also for the disabled child to receive something also. So
Very much.
most people just throw away the disabled child and the kids that do not have both parents in their lives. So orphan kids. So he was also pushing for them also to get something small from government, a small welfare check at the end of the month also. So.
But maybe we should also give President Nujoma credit for maintaining our multi-party democracy.
Yes, because remember, SOPO had the two-third majority for a long time.
Yeah.
And no matter what happened, he always said we should be Namibian, no matter which party. Even Dr. Itula even came out to say no matter what fights he had to SOPO, the hands of Dr. Nujoma was always open to him.
Always.
Even though he left and he gave the biggest blow to SOPO that anyone has given SOPO in a while, Dr. Njoma's hands were always open to him.
Yeah.
And that is just something that is proof of the multi-party system that he was in favor of.
We live in the SADC region. Namibia is perhaps one of the democracies that is close to democratic consolidation.
Yeah.
We have other terrible case studies like Mozambique, where the other political parties are being suppressed by government, clearly being suppressed by government. We have the example of Zimbabwe right next to our door. Other political parties, opposition parties suppressed. We have Angola, suppression of. So the maintenance of our multi-party democracy, it ensured that people from all the corners of Namibia were represented and their voice was heard in that regard. Yeah, but we can also talk about how under Sam Nujoma the power was decentralized.
Yeah,
the regional councils, the village councils, town councils,
the chiefs also,
the traditional chiefs
that was still given power by Dr. Nujoma.
So it's not to say that I'm the man on the top and I'm doing all the shots, I'm calling all the shots.
Yeah.
He made sure that all these people had power. And we can also look at how, in terms of the constitution,
which he was the pivotal of the party, playing that they don't overstep the branches.
The three branches
do not overstep
the
each other.
separation of powers, checks and balances.
Which guys, you guys don't understand.
And these things, when we say freedom and stability, peace and stability, it's because of these things that Sam Nujoma advocated for. And that is because of these things under the constitution that was passed under the leadership of Sam Nujoma that we are enjoying some of these things today. Yeah, so and maybe to just touch on one last thing is to talk about how he was, he was a conservative, environmental conservative.
Yes. That is why almost our whole coastline is protected.
Absolutely.
So it's always like even though the green hydrogen is so hard to get anything done because that whole coastline is currently under the protection of the Namibian constitution. So you can even say he was a forward-thinking leader, guys. As I've been saying this for a while. No other Southern African country had this in their constitution. We're the first to have it in our constitution. This just shows you what a forward-thinking man Dr. Nujoma was at that time.
Wow, so, I mean, this man spent 30 years in exile, or 30 years outside of the country.
Yes.
There was a time he returned and in 6 hours he was deported out of the country. But he was very instrumental in lobbying for Namibia at the United Nations and lobbying for Namibia with supporters of Namibian independence and democracy, during his time abroad. Not to mention his contributions to sending intellectuals to go and study
outside the country. Yes, through SWAPO. There's so many people, there's so many parents right now. They can say, no, the reason why I have what I have today is because of Dr. Nujoma and the doors that Dr. Nujoma opened for us. Through education, as I said, he was very big on education.
Absolutely.
So a lot of influential individuals right now, and also other normal people, just doctors and nurses, currently right now, they've also got the chance to go study in Cuba, Russia, China, all of these places, getting great opportunities to go study through Dr. Nujoma and the SWAPO party also. So when we say that Dr. Nujoma was a man of reconciliation, he was a forward-thinking man, this is not us saying it just for the fun of us saying it. There is proof and evidence to say. There is checks to prove that Dr. Nujoma was all this.
Indeed.
So
perhaps maybe your last statement in this discussion. I mean, there's more that we could say.
Yeah, but due to time limitations.
Due to time, we focused on just maybe some of the essentials, but maybe just your last.
So, just my last would be to say to the Nujoma family that the whole nation is standing with you, and in this pivotal time, we wish you all the best currently in this time.
Absolutely. And maybe I will just say to the incoming regime, let us preserve, these good qualities of a stable democracy, and let us not try to erode it. Perhaps I was not supposed to mention this, but I have to say it. There's a current bill.
In Parliament currently. Right?
Yeah, it's about the gatherings of people.
Yes.
I don't know, but that bill, it sounds problematic because it's trying to
Dr. Nujoma himself always advocated for people for free movement. Due to what we had under the police zone, under the apartheid regime and the German regime, Dr. Nujoma always fought against this. So this will be very contradictory to what Dr. Nujoma fought for if we are trying to pass this bill, guys. I know it's very controversial speaking about this bill right now at this moment, but just to say it, get it out there, that this will be going against what the founding father fought for. And let us not break down what he has built up, which took more than 30 years to build up. Let us not break it down in one day, guys.
Absolutely. Well, if you are tuned in, I am Martin Nafuka and alongside
Giovanni Plessis.
And this was a message discussing the legacy of the late Dr. His Excellency President Sam Nujoma. Thank you.